What happened to destroy the black community? To provide a complete answer to this question, one must rely on undeniable facts, statistics, historical evidence, and absolutely verifiable information, while avoiding bias as much as humanly possible. Fortunately, due to advances in modern information technology, information can no longer be hidden, and anyone with a computer and an internet connection can easily access the information and determine that without a shadow of a doubt, with the assistance of the white man, black women destroyed the black community. But first, in order to help the people of lower intelligence comprehend this information, I will graciously state what is obvious to people of normal intelligence, and that is that by using the phrase, the white man, I am generally referring to the historically racist system of white supremacy, not an actual white man. That would make no sense. I have close friends and family members who are white men, and by black women, I am referring to the vast, overwhelming majority of black women in the United States based on statistics, not the very few black women who are truly not like that. We will start with a brief history lesson because an honest, thorough discussion about the African American community is not possible without at least touching on the American slave trade. So let's get that out of the way right now. It's no secret that the white man was somehow able to overcome all bounds of human decency by actually conceiving, planning, and executing the most evil human atrocity ever committed in the known history of humanity, then teaching it to their children and passing it down from generation to generation, from father to son, for around 400 years. This horrible thing that the white man was into, of course, is an especially heinous type of human slavery which was unlike slavery anywhere else on earth since recorded history. Its tactics had never been seen before, its level of insidiousness had never been invented, and it was a kind of evil that was unfathomable and just plain unimaginable to anyone, including the Africans themselves, except the ones that were caught and sold into slavery, but only after they found themselves chained to a wall like an animal in the belly of a slave boat. White men were somehow able to ignore basic natural human decency to such an extent that raping women and children of another race and murder of men of another race was a normal and accepted part of their daily life. White men had such a voracious appetite for this demented behavior and deviant thought process that they regularly journeyed long distances to the land of other people, and through kidnapping and many other extremely unscrupulous and unspeakable means, created methods and ways to chain men, women, and children up and line their live naked bodies in the cargo spaces of wooden boats where they would either die in their own urine and feces or somehow manage to live through it to see their life become what most people would consider worse than death itself. The white man conceived of physical, emotional, and psychological methods to strip the survivors of their culture, clothing, family, pride, name, religion, and basic hope. This information can be easily verified in the most eminent textbook in the world on the history of the African American people, From Slavery to Freedom, 7th and 8th editions, by the most eminent scholar on the history of African American people, Dr. John Hope Franklin, who incidentally lived to be 94 years old. A quick but very important side note, Dr. Franklin died after the 8th edition, so anything newer than the 7th and 8th edition is a fabrication and is not the book. The 9th edition of this textbook and any further edition was not written by Dr. Franklin and are filled from cover to cover with added false narrative, inaccurate history, and propaganda written by others attempting to capitalize on Dr. Franklin's work and push their own agendas into the black community. In fact, the book was rewritten by a feminist propaganda writer named Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham after Dr. Franklin had already died, and it was falsely labeled and marketed and sold as the 9th edition of Dr. Franklin's original book. So whatever you do, don't be fooled into purchasing any edition after the 8th edition. Okay, that being said, there are volumes of other books dedicated to specifically outlining the methods the white men use to prevent the progression of black people, and anyone can Google them or go to the nearest library to learn of these methods. A strong stomach or a nearby vomit bucket may be helpful in digesting the information. The best and most efficient way to briefly describe the white man's slavery method is by using the phrase, the Willie Lynch method. Although the method is from a document that is claimed to have been written during the African slavery period of America, and some people claim it was written much later, the unquestionable truth is that it basically describes how the white man had come to the conclusion that adult black men were too mentally strong to break their spirit enough to accept perpetual slavery as their fate. But if they were able to destroy the masculine image of the black man in the eyes of the black woman, she would relinquish her dependence on the black man, leaving herself independent, exposed, and vulnerable, where she could then be broken, and as the mother of black boys, she could then be used to destroy the spirit of black men while they were still children, before they could even become fully grown black men. If you lived under a rock for your whole life and never heard of the Willie Lynch method or the Willie Lynch letter, here is a direct quote regarding this depraved method. Quote, "We reverse nature by burning and pulling a civilized nigger apart and bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in the black woman's presence. Then, with the black male image destroyed in her mind, the ordeal will cause the black woman to be psychologically frozen into an independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles. For fear of her young male child's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offsprings to be psychologically independent like herself. Now you've got the nigger woman out front and the nigger man behind and scared. This makes for a perfect situation of sound sleep and economics for the white man." This is just a very small excerpt from the Willie Lynch document, but basically the process creates what people call a mammy, which is a black female servant who is granted trivial preferential treatment by her own oppressor in exchange for assuming the oppressor's agenda and not being required to answer to anyone except her oppressors, the white man. To picture what a mammy is, just watch any black and white movie with a fat black woman in it. She will be the loud one with a rag tied on her head, ratting to the white man on the other black people, or speaking in a low, spooky slave voice to other black people, trying to deter them from doing anything the white man in the movie doesn't want them to do. An actual example of mammies are the fat black woman in Gone with the Wind. The role played by Nell Carter in Gimme a Break is also an example. The characters of Belle or Fanta in Roots, etc., are all examples of mammies. Anyway, the Willie Lynch method of controlling black people gets much more sinister than just the mammy part, but anyone can verify the validity of this method and actual existence of this document by simply Googling the Willie Lynch letter and reading the entire document for themselves. But to put it succinctly, black women were the key to breaking black people, because once the black woman destroyed her own children for the white man and raised them to think and behave in a way that the white man deemed acceptable for a slave, it became nearly impossible to reverse the process according to the method. And so various forms of slavery and horrible oppression of the black community continued for the remainder of 400 years. Then the 1960s happened. Black men worked together and finally became successful in creating strategies and systems that allowed black people in the United States as a whole to overcome the 400 years of systematic oppression that had been imposed upon them. It was called the Civil Rights Movement. Although some of these black men, such as Dr. Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Roy Wilkins, Malcolm X, Philip Randolph, Eldridge Cleaver, Harry Belafonte, Huey P. Newton, Muhammad Ali, Whitney Young, Medgar Evers, John Lewis, Bobby Seale, Andrew Young, Ralph Abernathy, Elijah Muhammad, etc., became the famous faces of the civil rights movement. Countless black men worked together by forming various groups such as the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, the Black Panther Party, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, the Nation of Islam, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, etc. And although each group utilized somewhat different methods, together they effectively overran and disrupted an inherently racist and overtly oppressive system, forcing the system to bend and bow to their demands in order to set things right after 400 years. Every facet of society was affected. Every person of every race was affected in one way or another. All businesses, from small to the largest businesses in America, were forced to make changes in their racist practices. Every level of the government was forced to comply, from local governments all the way up to the Congress and Senate and to the very President of the United States himself. Although the government resisted heavily, laws were forced into existence by these black men, and society was forced to make epic and monumental changes. No racist facet of the clearly oppressive system was safe from attack from these men in the civil rights movement. Although the civil rights movement was conceived, created, and run by black men, regular, decent white men and women also contributed, and many black women were compelled to offer their assistance in whatever way they could contribute, and were included in the struggle in various creative ways, which is exactly how a soft-spoken, demure young black woman by the name of Rosa Parks, who was working as a secretary for the NAACP at the time, was strategically utilized by the civil rights movement as a indisputable defenseless face of the effects of racism, evoking sympathy and condemnation of racism from all races of people, including regular non-racist white people. Laws were changed, society was forced to adjust despite extremely strong resistance and overtly desperate failed attempts to destroy the movement. The civil rights movement was a giant wrecking ball that was bowling over all of the barriers that had been erected to hold black people down, and it could not be stopped. Black people made more progress in society during the few years of the civil rights movement than in all of the 350 years since the beginning of slavery combined. The civil rights movement in the 1960s is widely accepted as the pinnacle of pride and power for the black community. In fact, it was during this time that the term black pride and black power was was actually created by black men who were leaders in the civil rights movement. Black people were poised to begin a monumental comeback, and that was 350 years in the making, because the methods that were created in the system to prevent the natural forward progression of black people in the society were being quickly and systematically dismantled by these black men in the civil rights movement. These are all well-known and very well-documented facts that can easily be fully verified by anyone. Up to this period of time, even after 350 years of constant, nearly insurmountable, destructive forces specifically targeting the black family and community, and even though income and prison rate disparages in the black community had not yet been overcome, black people were shockingly able to keep the black family unit relatively intact. In 1960, there were married couples in approximately 74% of all black homes, which is near the same percentage of white homes. In 1965, despite the racist onslaught of systematic disenfranchisement against black people in society, approximately 76% of all black children still came from two married parents, in fact. In this time of black two-parent homes, the black single mother teenage pregnancy epidemic did not exist, of course. The current popular term baby mama did not exist in the black community. The vast, overwhelming majority of black household income came from black men, and thus black men were overwhelmingly the head of the black household. During the 1960s, blacks had fought and managed to reach the middle class income level in larger numbers than at any other time in the history of black people living in America. Black men single-handedly revolutionized the music industry by creating a beautiful new genre of music which appealed to all races of people, young and old alike, and quickly spread to all continents on earth, bringing people of all races together to this very day. In fact, with the mention of the name Motown, no further evidence or explanation is necessary. In the 1960s, there was no epidemic of drive-by shootings or carjackings by teenage black boys in the black community. The popular phrases black people used, such as "black is beautiful," "black power," or "say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," originated during this time. On the contrary, the current popular phrases of black women, such as I'm a strong black woman who don't need no man, did not exist in the 1960s. There was no known black woman obesity or epidemic in the 1960s like there is now. African American women were known to be genuinely proud of who they were, as seen by the fact that they were known to proudly display their own uniquely textured hair that grows from only their African American scalps. Proudly displaying one's own natural African American soft as a ball of cotton hair was so prevalent during this time that a new word in the English language was invented in order to give a name to it. That name, of course, even to this day, is the Afro. Gluing fake white women's hair into their scalp was something that was unheard of in the black community in the 1960s for obvious reasons. In fact, unlike today, terms such as child support payments, food stamps, WIC Section 8 projects were not known to be synonymous with the status of African American community before the late 1960s. In the 1960s, large numbers of qualified black men started running for and being elected mayors in large cities for the first time in the U.S. history since the 1800s during Reconstruction period, after slavery was banned. Clearly, the black community was poised to truly overcome 400 years of oppression, and against all odds, were on the very cusp of being one of the greatest inspirational comeback stories in the history of all societies. Since the current problems that exist in the black community did not exist just 40 years ago, it is blatantly obvious that they were not due in any significant way to the continuous effects of slavery. In fact, since slavery ended in 1865 legally, the residual effects from slavery should be gradually and consistently improving in correlation to the time that has passed since 1865. And this did happen until approximately 40 years ago, after the success of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, when the black community suffered a catastrophic arrest in development that halted its forward progress and caused it to actually start moving backward. So the obvious question is, what started happening during the 60s that interrupted the monumental progress that the black community was making, and that sent the African American community down a 40-year progressively darkening downward spiral that has led to its current extremely dysfunctional state? If reproducible evidence, statistics, objective information, historical data, verifiable documents, research, and well-known facts are utilized instead of subjective feelings, the answer is clear and obvious by the end of this video. Here are the facts. The government started paying black women through various forms of welfare to have bastard children. In 1965, after all of the massive changes that the government was forced by the civil rights movement to reluctantly make, and while the black community was clearly independently taking the ownership of the responsibility of improving their own place in society without handouts from the white man, out of virtually nowhere, the United States government suddenly and inexplicably decided to commission a high-level, federally backed research study that specifically outlined and highlighted the weaknesses in the African American community and the specific areas that, if exploited, will potentially lead to the failure of the progress within the black family and thus the black community. This research study was headed by the U.S. Senator Patrick Moynihan, and the name of the study was The Negro Family, a Case for National Action. It was effectively known as the Moynihan Report. It is an extremely well-known research study that is unclassified, and Senator Moynihan's actual entire final report can easily be verified and reviewed by simply doing a basic Google search. The study specifically and systematically outlined all of the weak and vulnerable areas of the black family and community that slowed its progress, thus highlighting and exposing the specific areas that, if manipulated effectively, could potentially bring about the destruction of the black family and community. The outcome of the study was reported to the President of the United States himself, at that time Lyndon B. Johnson, who used the information to make a very powerful speech at Howard University, the leading historically black university in the United States, to garner support for himself among the black community. Then, inexplicably and almost immediately following the speech, the president disavowed the information in the report while simultaneously initiating the exact steps reported in the study that would lead to the eventual demise and destruction of the black family and community. To be specifically factual, the study clearly states that an increase in matriarchal or single mother household would decimate the black family and thus the black community. After learning this, the President of the United States then launched its campaign of providing financial reward to black women in exchange for actually becoming single black mothers and establishing matriarchal homes in the black community. And this campaign continues to this very day. These financial rewards that were promised by the government to black women who were able to successfully produce bastard children are in many convoluted forms, but I will just list 7 of the major forms of payments to black women for producing bastard children. Number 1, food stamps, which were created in 1964 by the government and is exchanged for free food, primarily for unmarried women who could prove that they had children with no fathers in the home. Number 2, Medicaid, which is free medical insurance primarily for unmarried women with bastard children. Number 3, welfare benefits, which was free money for unmarried women who could prove that they had bastard children living in poverty, and horrifically, the payments increased by the bastard, which means that the more bastard or fatherless children she could produce, the more money the government would pay her. Number 4, Section 236 program, later to be known as Section 8, housing, which was free housing and rent primarily for single mothers who did not provide their children with a father in the home. Number 5, Child Support Public Law 89 to 97 of 1965. Public Law 90-248 of 1967, Uniform Parentage Act of 1973, Public Law 93-647 of 1974, Public Law 86-265, and at least 20 other laws which amount to the creation of the current child support system, which allows the state to take an extremely high percentage of a father's wage earnings, keep some for itself, grant the rest to the mother of his child if she divorces her husband or chooses to give birth to a bastard child, and then allow the state to be paid approximately 50 cents by the federal government for every dollar it took from the father. Number 6, federal child daycare payments and tax breaks to single mothers if they were able to prove that they were raising their child in poverty-stricken single mother household. Examples of these laws are the Dependent Care Credit Law of 1976, enacted during Gerald Ford's presidency, the Child Care and Development Block Grant of 1990, enacted by George Bush's first presidential term, and others. And number 7, the Women, Infants, and Children's Program, or WIC, otherwise known as WIC, created by the U.S. government in 1972 to give free food to women who qualified by raising children in poverty-stricken homes as a single mother. In fact, raising a child in a family home that included a working father would disqualify anyone from this government assistance, which is the reason the letter F for family or M for man is blatantly absent from WIC or WIC. In fact, there are too many other forms of welfare to list here, but all can be verified by a quick trip to your local welfare office. Anyway, black women accepted this deal in extremely large numbers, and in fact, the numbers of black women who signed onto the government's welfare payoff skyrocketed in exact correlation to the increased numbers of bastard children in the black community, causing it to reach epidemic levels. And by the 1980s, the female children of black women were already duplicating their mothers and having second generation of babies for welfare money. This exchange between black women and the government for welfare money payments to her in return to the removal of black men from the home and production of a bastard black children follows the rules of the Willie Lynch letter to the letter, because it rewards black women for destroying their own children and has continued to this very day, and to the point that the vast majority of children of black women are forced to be victims of this by their own mothers before they are even born. Proof and evidence of this is the fact that according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 70 to 80% of children of black women have no fathers in the home, which is extremely high compared to before these welfare payoffs started. But wait, there's more. The government started paying women to remove their husbands from the household, and black women specifically accepted this payment deal in monumental numbers. In 1970, the government created what is known as no-fault divorce laws, starting in California and progressively expanding from state to state to become the current dysfunctional system, and basically allows a woman to be unfaithful in her marriage, divorce her husband, be granted custody of the children, and then be granted half of the former husband's wealth in return. To further incentivize the idea of divorcing the husband and father of the children and having children outside of marriage, in 1975, the government created the current child support system to forcibly take money from the divorced fathers and grant it to mothers of their children, because so many women with children were divorcing their husbands after the new no-fault divorce laws. It would have an even more profoundly negative effect on the black community, because statistically, black women had already started skipping the marriage altogether and going straight to becoming unwed mothers in large numbers to qualify for the government's welfare payoff. And the reward was too great for a large percentage of the remaining married black women to resist. So black women took full advantage of these new laws in extremely large numbers, and it meant they would be paid and rewarded even more by the government to have bastard children and or remove them from the father's authority. Assisting the government to destroy the relationship between men and their children also provided even more incentive to women, allowing her to use it to exact revenge on the man for not wanting to be with her. Because although all statistical evidence demonstrates that it ruins the child, according to NPR, it also financially destroys the man who is the father. Based on the fact that 70 to 80% of all black children have no fathers in the home, black women chose to sign onto this system in extremely large numbers. And again, this system of rewarding the black woman while destroying the black man in front of her is straight from the pages of the Willie Lynch letter. But wait, there's even more. The government and the lesbian feminist movement both used black women to sabotage the civil rights movement from within the black family. In the 1970s, two groups, the lesbian feminist movement and the U.S. intelligence community, which includes the FBI and CIA, worked together to recruit black women specifically to sabotage their own family and community. To be specific, in the early 1970s, the feminists and lesbian groups began to copy, spin, and twist the successful methods of the civil rights movement into a perverted and warped false victim strategy in order to achieve their own political agendas. However, their numbers were too small to force the political change that they wanted. No one took them seriously, so they initially had difficulty reaching their political and social engineering objectives. Simultaneously, the government's intelligence programs were actively subversively spying and infiltrating all civil rights groups in order to break them up. To be specific, the FBI used a federally funded program called COINTELPRO to spy on, infiltrate, and bring down civil rights movements. Go look it up. This is easily verifiable because the official declassified FBI transcripts of Dr. Martin Luther King, his wife, Malcolm X, and other civil rights leaders clearly document this, and these transcripts are now available to the public. The CIA considered civil rights movements to be a threat to the establishment, according to the CIA in these transcripts, and created its own federally funded program similar to the FBI's COINTEL program and named it Operation Chaos to spy on domestic groups within the civil rights movement that they considered to be a threat to the establishment. With hundreds of thousands of well-documented, declassified CIA domestic spy transcripts available to the public, this is easily verifiable. And according to the CIA transcripts, one of the most effective tactics that the CIA used was to recruit feminist leaders such as feminist writer named Gloria Steinem as paid agents to target black women and work as a leader in the CIA-funded propaganda campaigns to convince very large numbers of black women to abandon the civil rights movement and join the feminist lesbian movement instead. This tactic was mutually beneficial to the feminist movement and the government intelligence agencies for two reasons. First, it was agreeable to the lesbian and feminist movement because the more black women abandoned the civil rights movement and joined their movement, the bigger and politically strong the lesbian feminist movement would be, which would finally give them the numbers to force politicians who needed their votes to advance their agenda. Secondly, this tactic would also benefit the government intelligence agencies because with black women under their control, they had an inside man in the black community finally, and could destroy the civil rights movement from within the black family. The CIA's chosen agent to lead this project, feminist writer Gloria Steinem, was paid by the CIA to ghostwrite a book that targeted black women specifically to convince them that the civil rights movement was somehow oppressing them, and that black women should leave the civil rights movement in order to join the lesbian and feminist movement instead, where they would simply be given more attention. The book is entitled Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman, and some young black female college student by the name of Michelle Wallace was recruited and paid to pretend that she wrote it instead of a white woman so that black women would trust the message in it. She then claimed to have a nervous breakdown and went into hiding for 2 years after she was exposed as a fraud, and it was discovered that Gloria Steinem was the ghostwriter of the book. The feminist movement bamboozled black women into thinking that they were somehow so strong that they did not need protection from outside sources. I know it sounds absurd, but it's true. Go look it up. I can't make this stuff up. We are talking about black men in the civil rights movement, where the primary objective of black men were to protect the whole black family, which included black women. This is the very reason the Black Panthers carried guns at all times and created the first food program specifically to feed the children of black women and protect them from hunger. In fact, the Black Panthers food program fed over 10,000 black children per day in major cities across the entire country. Protecting black women was paramount to the civil rights movement, which is the only reason Rosa Parks was protected for the rest of her life, living a life of comfort and contentment to the ripe old age of 92 years old, like she deserved. In fact, Malcolm X himself proclaimed the need to protect black women. Yet black women chose to abandon the protection of black men for the lesbian feminist movement and proclaimed that they were now somehow so strong that they no longer needed protection of black men. Though extremely diabolical, this feminist movement proved to be overwhelmingly successful as black women began to follow the feminist recommendations and abandon their marriages and families even more than ever. The proof is in the fact that there is an inverse correlation between the rise of the feminist movement and the numbers of two-parent homes in the black community. For the dummies out there who have difficulty understanding basic concepts like this, it means that as the feminist and lesbian movement grew at a very rapid rate, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the numbers of single mothers and fatherless children in the black community also grew at a very rapid rate. At this point, black men and the civil rights movement was now fighting against attack from two sides. One side is black women, the other side is white men. With their black families now in peril and disarray on one front, black men were unable to hold the civil rights movement together against the attack on the other front by a hardcore and murderously racist system, and the civil rights movement began to fold. Since then, black women have taken the feminist agenda to such an extreme level of disdain and hatred for black men that it has even surpassed that of the white lesbian and feminist movement. Evidence of this is an extremely well-known phrase used by black women: "I'm a strong, independent black woman who don't need no man." Further evidence of this is the fact that this idea and its tenets have become ingrained into the culture of black women to such an extent that homosexual lesbian black women have actually now allowed themselves to continue to be used and completely funded with astonishingly large amounts of money by a wealthy global capitalist and social engineer named George Soros to create a group using the murders of young black men by racist police as an excuse to ironically call for the removal of black men from black family and replace with black lesbian LGBT people, LGBT people. That group is ironically known as Black Lives Matter. These are just a few examples of the rewards granted to black women for turning on her family and community. It is also vital to remember that this reward for treachery is an extremely important and central tenet of the Willie Lynch process, and it has been executed on the American black woman flawlessly. The image of the strong and powerful black man in the mind of black women was targeted and destroyed by a racist system, with the project of rewarding black women to sell out and betray their own family and community fully initiated following the progress made by the men in the civil rights movement. The image of the strong black man in the mind of black women was next to go under full attack. Black men in the civil rights movement became a target and constantly humiliated, assaulted, beaten, and murdered by police or by racist white men with the help of police, or with very few if any being brought to justice by the court system, and it was all televised nationally for the whole world, including black women, to see, of course. Actual proof and examples of this are murdered black men such as Corporal Roman Duckworth Jr., Medgar Evers, Virgil Lamar Ware, Lewis Allen, Malcolm X, Henry Hezekiah D., Lieutenant Colonel Lemuel Penn, Jimmy Lee Jackson, Willie Brewster, Martin Luther King, Samuel Lehman Young Jr., Warlest Jackson, Benjamin Brown, and the list goes on for eternity. Coincidentally or not, the unavoidable fact is that the image of black men being destroyed in a horrific way in front of black women obviously follows the Willie Lynch method to perfection. The black man's image was destroyed in the mind of black women in other ways too. To be specifically factual, overwhelmingly, the largest demographic for television talk shows are women. And by the 1980s, for questionable reasons, it had become very profitable in television media to pay black women to come on talk shows and portray black men as ignorant, lazy, and completely morally bankrupt. And unfortunately, all talk shows during that time, including Oprah Winfrey, Sally Jessy Raphael, Rolanda, Ricky Lake, Geraldo, Jerry Springer, Maury Povich, Morton Downey Jr., and even Phil Donahue regularly produced these shows and made a lot of money through corporate sponsorship to show this on national television. You can go look it up yourself on YouTube. There's countless examples. Since women are almost the exclusive demographic targeted by these shows, and since black people watch television more than any other group according to Nielsen ratings, black women obviously watch these shows in huge numbers, especially when the women who are portraying black men in this way on the show are other black women, which means it's another way to destroy the image of black men in the mind of black women. Again, if you are too young to remember these shows and want proof and evidence of this, a quick search on YouTube for 80s talk shows and black women will easily verify this. In fact, although black women make up approximately 8% of the entire United States, they make up a quarter of Oprah Winfrey's television audience. Black women watch this kind of television so much, according to the Nielsen ratings, which can easily be checked and verified, that Oprah Winfrey, the undisputed queen of daytime talk show, used to promote this specific negative image of black men in the mind of black women, created an entire television network targeting black women as one of his primary demographics, and all it takes to see the incessant portrayal of black men as weak-minded, useless, incompetent, effeminate males is to watch 15 minutes of the OWN or Oprah Winfrey Network yourself. If after all of that, it's somehow still not enough to convince you that the image of black men in the mind of black women has been under attack for the past 40 years, here are more facts. By the 1990s, movies that were marketed to black people, especially to black women, such as Waiting to Exhale, Poetic Justice, Soul Food, What's Love Got to Do with It, Jason's Lyric, A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, Booty Call, How Stella Got Her Groove, Boys in the Hood, Men's Society, Dead Presidents, and countless others, featured the fictional roles of black males who were either written into the script as incompetent in whatever they were doing, weak and dependent upon black women, morally bankrupt, and or low-life black men who were always running from the white man and useless to black women. The trend continues to this day with TV shows and movies such as Precious and The Butler and Scandal and For Colored Girls, which not only have no strong male roles in the entire movie, but all roles of black males are over the top disgusting. They are repulsive and cringingly weak. For proof of this, watching any of these movies is all it takes. Although most of these movies are pretty good movies by itself, when examining the character of the black men in these movies, a cringe warning is probably in order. Further evidence of this conspiracy to destroy the image of black men in the eyes of black women, in the mind of black women, is the strangely peculiar fact that nearly, if not all, black men who make it in Hollywood are forced to portray themselves as an effeminate man, a morally corrupt black man, a weak, incompetent black man, or wear a dress on screen. Although this fact is only unknown to a person who has been living under a rock during their entire adult life, if you are still unable to or unaware of this, just Google what Dave Chappelle said about this conspiracy in Hollywood against black men. The bottom line is that there is no doubt that the image of strong black men in the mind of black women has been under the attack since the late 60s. But again, it is nevertheless a vital tenet of the Willie Lynch method of controlling black people through the manipulation of black women's mind described earlier, and thus a major cause of the part of the problem in the black community. Moving on, it is widely propagandized that a large percentage of black men, if not most black men, are in prison. In fact, one of the most well-known phrases quoted by black women is, "All the good black men are in jail," as the reason they can't find a black man who will agree to marry them. First of all, the fact that a person thinks prisoners are good men says a lot about the kind of men she's attracted to. The media also pushes this false idea that a large percentage of the majority of black men are in prison because the sensational idea behind it is a guaranteed ratings grabber. An example of this is the ABC Nightline TV show that, although proven false since then, reported black men in jail as a significant reason black women are unmarried. So an honest discussion on the causes of problems in the black community would not be complete without covering this falsely manufactured large percentage of black men are in jail narrative. Here are the actual facts. According to the Center on Juvenile Criminal Justice, in 1983 and 1984, CCA and GEO Wackenhut, private prison companies began funneling millions of dollars to lawmakers, creating a prison industry lobby to Congress and Senate. Just these two companies alone now imprison more people than the total sum of all black inmates. Then, in 1984, the Sentencing Reform Act was passed that abolished parole in federal prisons. Then, in 1986, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act was passed that required mandatory long prison sentencing for extremely small amounts of drugs almost exclusively used by black drug addicts, crystallized cocaine. While it didn't apply to drugs almost exclusively used by white drug addicts, powdered cocaine. According to the Center on Juvenile Criminal Justice, in 1986, private companies began contracting with the U.S. government and began receiving money to build prisons for the government's use, and in return received money to run these private prisons as a business for profit. The more people the government imprisoned, the more money the companies that it contracted with were paid to keep them locked up. In fact, according to the VERA Institute for Justice, New York State prisons receive $60,000 per inmate from the federal government yearly, and there are 54,700 inmates in New York State alone. However, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there were 21.5 million black men in the United States in 2013, and according to the U.S. Department of Justice, only 844,000 of them were in jail in 2010, which means around 3 to 6% of black men are in prison, which is around the same amount of the black community. In fact, according to the American Council on Education, there are 1,341,000 black men in college at the same time, which means that, in fact, there are more black men in college than in jail. This means that although the prison industrial complex can easily and fairly be compared to modern state-sanctioned slavery for profit, and even after all of the money and effort poured into the prison industry, and even though the prison industry targets black people at an extremely high rate versus other races, and even with private prisons being traded on the Wall Street stock market, paralleling slaves being traded on the block in the market, the actual number of black men in prison is so small compared to the overall numbers of black men in the United States that statistically, similar to the crack epidemic pushed into the black community by the government, not only is it not the cause of the problem in the black community to any statistical significance, but it is in fact a result. This is most evident when listing the specific dysfunctional factors in the black community and matching it to the actual primary causes. To add to this, statistically, it is not mathematically possible for the 2 to 6% of the black population who are in prison to be responsible for any significant percentage of the problems in the black community. However, one of the many results of the dysfunctional problems in the black community is clearly the fact that that same 2 to 6% of black men are being imprisoned. Furthermore, the mere fact that this basic information is a surprise to most people and has been virtually left out of the talking points in the media regarding black men would seem evident to anyone with basic common sense that it was not done by mistake. With that being said, although the percentage of black men in prison is relatively extremely small compared to the actual numbers of black men in society, it must be understood that the image of a subjugated, defeated, weak, and imprisoned black man in the mind of black women, not necessarily the actual numbers, would perfectly fulfill the primary goal of the Willie Lynch method. Although the numbers of black men in prison is decreasing consistently, a higher percentage of black men are still incarcerated in the unjust and unfair prison system than any other race, and the vast majority of those inmates were raised in a black mother-only home, which statistically is a major determinant for whether a person will end up in prison. And even more ironically, a large number of black men in prison system are there instead of being in their children's lives as a father to prevent them from going to prison due to black women turning them into the system because the men can't afford to pay them the amount of child support money granted to them by the same system that is unjust and corrupt, the same unjust court system. Unfortunately for the bastard female children of black women, the devastating and abusive effects of unmarried black mothers on their children appears to be permanent on their female children, while fortunately it is often only temporary and can be reversed in a significant percentage of their male children. In fact, according to the American Journal of Public Health, the long-term detrimental effects of abuse is much greater in girls than boys. This is also evidenced by the fact that there are so many black men who were raised as a bastard child by a black single mother and who used to be lowlifes, drug dealers, and criminals in their youth, but who are now mentors and outstanding, productive members of society. This by no means applies to all male children of unmarried black women, but it clearly applies to a large enough percentage to make this phenomena very clearly noticeable. For the young black men that this does apply to, it appears that logical and rational thought eventually prevails, and they realize that the dysfunctional and unproductive way in which they have been living their lives was taught to them from birth by none other than their very own mother, and that unless they denounce the way that they were raised by her, they will live this way until they die. Accepting the fact that they have been screwed by their own mother for their whole life is a horribly bitter pill to swallow because the only constant thing in their life is their mother. But men deal in facts and logic, and facts and logic cannot be denied. So these young black men bravely swallow that bitter pill, and afterward they begin the process of unlearning all of these dysfunctional behaviors that they were taught by their mother, relearning how to think and behave like a man from other mentors that they have actively pursued on their own as adults, which means they fall on their faces a lot in the process, but they pick themselves up over and over along the way, eventually figure it out on their own and change their own behavior in order to turn their life around for the better. Although these men are usually in their 30s and 40s by this time, once these black men make that change, they generally never look back. Unfortunately, this does not seem to happen with the bastard female children of single black women, and of course the American Journal of Public Health confirms this as stated earlier. But more evidence is the fact that no one has ever heard of a good, decent black female productive member of society who used to be a ratchet, loudmouth black bastard making hood rat, but is no longer like that. No one's ever heard of that. So it appears that once fatherless black women are raised by their single mother to be that way, they apparently remain that way for the rest of their lives. The fact is that one must be able to think with much more logic and rational thought than emotion in order to realize and accept the fact that you will need to relearn everything in life because your own mother was the teacher of your dysfunction and self-destructive behavior that has led to your miserable existence in life. Evidence of this is the fact that it is very well studied and well documented medical and biological fact that men think primarily with logic and ration, while women primarily use emotion to rationalize their thoughts. These facts are not only well documented and undisputable, but extremely easy to confirm by reading any research study from medical or psychological research journal regarding the matter. I would suggest the American Journal of Community Psychology, the Journal of Abnormal Psychology, or the Journal of Behavioral and Brain Sciences. Aside from that, any adult with basic intelligence can tell you this. It's not rocket science. With that said, it appears that since the female mind utilizes emotion to rationalize their thoughts, it would be too emotionally devastating for them to accept that the first person that they ever loved, and the person who they love more than any other person on earth, is the very person who knowingly sabotaged their life for their own self-centered reasons. And in order to avoid this devastating and uncomfortable reality, black women simply avoid making the connection in their mind, viciously strike out at anyone who brings this obvious fact up, and continue the same dysfunctional cycle passed down from mother to daughter.
Now we will count down the evidence of how black women have become the hand of the white man inside the black family and community and the insidious driving force behind its destruction.
Number 1. Black women have adopted a toxic victim mentality and false sense of entitlement. Black women have developed a sense of what many people term false entitlement, which means they have become so accustomed to being granted something for nothing that they believe that they are automatically deserving of anything they want, and they behave in, let's say, a certain well-known way when someone does not grant them what they want. Everyone knows that people generally choose to be with people who are on the same level as them. And black women are known for choosing the absolute lowest grade of men in the black community. The bottom 20% of black men, which means black women match the level of men in the bottom 20% of the black community. Yet it is well known that somehow black women complain about the quality of men that they choose to have bastard children with, as if black women are somehow on a higher level than the low-life men they typically involve themselves with. This is evident by the fact that black women are known to refer themselves as a female version of a king, or specifically black queens, which means a woman who is above all others in society, answers to no one for her actions or behaviors, is automatically granted anything she wants by all others, and is above apologizing to anyone. For example, ask yourself, when was the last time you heard a black woman simply say the words, "I'm sorry"? It's no secret that no one is surprised if your answer is never. Just ask any black man. The double irony in this is the fact that this is the same way a slave master thinks regarding his slaves, which confirms how effective the Willie Lynch method is in the mind of black women. And the other irony is that a queen actually submits to her king in all things, and she's required to behave in a regal manner and does not fraternize with the lower or lowest rungs of society, all of which are the opposite of what black women have made themselves known for, based on the fact that black women are known for rejecting submission to decent black men, having bastard children with black men that they themselves say are low-life deadbeats, and incessantly being seen on endless videos throughout the internet fighting in the streets. To verify evidence of this, simply ask a black woman what she thinks about submitting to a black man. Google women fighting in the streets, or look at the numbers of black women who file for child support claiming that the man she chose to spread her legs for, the father of her child, is a deadbeat. In fact, according to the United States Census Bureau, black women have the highest percentage of women who don't know who the fathers of their own children are, which means that even though 70 to 80% of their children have no father in the home, if child support is dependent on establishing paternity, regardless of how many actually go to the courts, fewer percentage of black women are actually granted child support orders than white women. Number 2, black women, bed wenches, ghetto gaggers, bitches, and hoes. It is well known in the black community that black women believe it to be below them to submit to black men. Ask any black man, or scroll through the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of comments by black men in the comment section of any YouTube video regarding the subject, and you will instantly confirm this. It's the reason for the actual existence of the dysfunctional phrase, "I'm a strong, independent black woman who don't need no man." That is only repeated by black women. However, despite this refusal to submit to black men, black women have become known for submitting to white men and demonstrate an extremely odd longing to be under the servitude of a white man. There are large groups of black women formed for the sole purpose of being with a white man, not a man that is not a black man, or a man that they love, cherish, and respect who happens to be white, but simply for the sake of being with a white man specifically. For a person who did not grow up with black women, this seems like a normal thing, because if a man and a woman are attracted to each other, nature is bound to take over, and the race of the two people doesn't matter to nature. And this is absolutely true, of course. In fact, a normal reason for any woman to want to be with any man, regardless of race or any other factor, is physical or romantic attraction. But that is not the case with black women in general, and this is evident by the fact that black women themselves say that the reason black women statistically don't date and marry outside of their race, and do so less than any other race of women, particularly white men, is because they are not attracted to white guys, physically or romantically, and that's according to black women. Yet without being romantically or physically attracted to white men, the fact still remains that the only men that black women will submit to is white men. The answer is that it's more of a demented drive to utilize and be a part of what she sees as the benefits of the white man's oppression of her own people. It's eerily similar to a person with Stockholm Syndrome, where a person, almost always a woman, develops a psychological alliance with her oppressors. If you are unaware of this, please don't be a dummy. Look it up. It's not hard. But evidence of this is the fact that although it is well known that black men despise fake hair, black women still wear it even though they are with a black guy. While it is nearly impossible to find a black woman with fake hair glued to her scalp married or dating a white guy, she knows that just like the black guy, the white guy is repulsed by it too. But for the white guy, she submits and does not wear it. It's also the reason you have never seen a black woman screaming belligerent, demeaning, emasculating insults at a white boyfriend or husband in public. But this public scene is extremely common when her husband or boyfriend is black. The reason this behavior contrast is so perfectly recognizable is because it falls perfectly in line with the results that come with the Willie Lynch method experienced by black women, as explained earlier. Go Google and read the Willie Lynch method yourself for further evidence, and then compare and contrast it with Stockholm Syndrome. It's such a shocking match that it may give you goosebumps. Another example of this peculiar behavior of black women is the fact that if a white man offers his sperm to any woman in order to be the father of her bastard child, not take care of it, and never see it again, actually, black women will come from long distances to be that man's sperm receptacle. This is not an opinion, it is fact. Just Google a man by the name of Ari Nagel, Arinagel, some weird white guy from New York. He offered his sperm to any woman who will take it, regardless of the race. And black women, just kept coming from across the United States until he had 22 bastard children by black women. Clearly, it's something mentally dysfunctional going on here with black women. But even more evidence for those who are somehow unaware of this not-so-secret problem in the black community is the fact that black women praise television shows that portray them as new age bed wenches to white men who belittle and degrade them. And they do this in shockingly large numbers. Evidence of this is the television show Scandal, which depicts a black woman in a new age version of a bed wench to a white man. The show is specifically targeted to black women as a major demographic, and yet instead of black women protesting such an obviously racist and demeaning idea, black women actually watch the show at a higher percentage than any other group of people. To confirm these facts, all it takes is a quick Nielsen ratings check online. But to really grasp how deep this Negro bed wench / Willie Lynch slave mentality is in the black woman's mind, all you have to do is Google search the words ghetto gaggers. Ghetto gaggers are black women who actually voluntarily sexually demean themselves for the pleasure of white men specifically, only by submitting only specifically to white men, while these men perform horribly demeaning acts on them, such as being beaten by them and choking them until snot drools from their noses. These black women allow white men to hawk spit in their faces, making them drink their own body fluids, slapping and urinating in their mouths, defecating in their faces, all while they are crying and being called niggers by the same white men that are doing this to them. As unbelievable as it may seem to those who don't know this, these facts can be verified by simply Googling the phrase ghetto gaggers. Have a vomit bucket on standby if you do. So that's how black women chose to become bed wenches and ghetto gaggers. But where did the whole bitches and hoes thing come from? It is well known that, similar to the Motown music industry, black men created rap music by simply speaking about what they see every day as a black man in the black community, good or bad. For example, black male rappers didn't invent the word nigger, but they know about it and hear it in the black community every day. So that's what they rap about. They see injustice, they see crime, they see violence in the black community every day. It's what they know about, so that's what they write about. Growing up poverty-stricken and desiring finer things in life like gold, jewelry, fast cars, money, is what they know. So it's what they write about in their raps. Examples of this is the rap song The Message by Grandmaster Flash, or Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos by Public Enemy, or The Ghetto by Too Short. So when the first wave of bastard female children from black women in the 60s and 70s were reaching their teens and 20s and behaving like bitches and hoes in the black community during the 80s and 90s, black men had a first row seat to seeing it with their own eyes. So of course, black male artists started speaking out about it and exposing it in their raps, because it's what they know, it's what they see. It was art imitating life. For example, simply read the lyrics to rap songs like I Ain't the One from Ice Cube, or Gin and Juice by Snoop Dogg, or Wonder Why They Call You Bitch by Tupac Shakur. Mainstream media initiated a huge campaign against black men referring to black women as bitches and hoes, even though everybody knows, based on the statistical results of their well-known actions and behaviors, that black women were behaving like bitches and hoes. They teamed up with black women and placed the face of black women out in the front of their campaign to silence black male rappers speaking on black women. An actual example of a black woman being used as the face of this media campaign is C. Dolores Tucker. Look her up. Funny thing is that the only other thing that they wanted black male rappers to stop talking about is fighting against police brutality. In fact, when Ice Cube came out with the rap called Cop Killer, which is in response to corrupt police targeting innocent black men, and NWA came out with a song called Fuck the Police, which was about the exact same thing, the media campaign went into hyperdrive to silence black male rappers. So black women and white men had a common enemy in the voice of black men, but in the process, the most obvious and blaring contradiction occurred. Neither of the two, the white man or the black woman, had a major problem with any of the other controversial things that black men were rapping about, such as black men murdering each other, drugs in the black community, and other crime perpetrated by blacks upon other blacks. Which of course clearly means that these things in the black community had the seal of approval by the white man and the black woman. Anyway, it took a while, but the music industry eventually removed rap artists who really spoke about what they saw in the black community, stopped granting contracts to groups like Public Enemy, X-Clan, Dead Prez, and began to only give contracts to weak, effeminate black men who speak only about what they were told to speak about by the people who paid them. It now became life imitating art. Evidence of this is 99.7% of the current rap songs of all rap songs produced in the past year. Now, magically, rap music is no longer socially conscious. It doesn't reflect what rappers experience or black people experience in the black community. Yet record companies encourage rappers to refer to black women as bitches and hoes because their lyrics won't seem real or authentic to anyone if they don't. Let that sink in. Number 3, black women have adopted a mentality of self-hate. Black women now actually hate and despise the very things about themselves that make them unique as black women, such as the very hair that exclusively grows from their scalps and the very skin color that black people are blessed to be born with. I think all can agree that when a woman is happy with her hair that grows from her scalp, she is seen primping her hair, playing with it, twisting it in her fingers, washing it in the shower, combing it in the morning, etc. They like it when a man touches and caresses their hair. However, everyone knows that these things do not apply to black women. Even outside of the black community, it's no secret that black women think that it is absolutely horrible thing for someone, even their own man, to touch their hair in any way. Even black women say themselves, just Google the words touch black woman's hair and you will see countless articles and YouTube videos by black women warning people not to touch their hair. In fact, black women don't even like touching their own hair with their own hands, which is the reason for the very existence of the phrase exclusively used by black women, get my hair did. For those outside of the black community, when a black woman needs to get her hair did, it means it hasn't been washed or shampooed for many weeks or months, so it usually smells. And instead of caring for her hair like most women and washing it herself, she puts a bag or ties a piece of cloth on her head and goes to a place where she pays someone to wash her hair for her, and then usually glue in fake white woman's hair afterward. Also, she can avoid touching her own hair. Now, you know why you see black women in public with bags on their head. Black women are so ashamed of their own hair that when they are seen on YouTube fighting each other, the very first thing they are known to do is try to shame and humiliate the other black female by snatching her fake white woman's hair off to expose her real hair underneath. Self-hate is so deeply entrenched in the black woman's mind, character, and behavior that the vast, overwhelming majority of them spend an extremely large amount of time and effort to have their real, natural hair sewn or matted down to their scalp while they glue or sew fake hair or used hair of other races of women on top of it in order to appropriate the natural genetics of white women and try to pretend that they are genetically different than black women. And unbelievable as it may seem, they leave this thing stuck on their head day and night for months without taking it off or washing the sweat and dirt from it themselves. Beside the absurd drag queen look that it gives them, the smell of sweat from the scalp soaking through under a blanket of glue and used hair for weeks and months smells horrific and horrible enough to draw bugs to infest their scalp and flies to lay maggots to feed on sweat and grow into big fat white worms crawling around their scalp. I'm not making this up. A simple YouTube search will immediately verify this, but warning, like I said, be prepared to vomit if you watch this. Your skin will crawl. Anyway, this is all very well known in the black community, but for those of you who are unaware of this black woman's secret, the itch that it causes and the desire to avoid moving their glued-in hair around on their scalp is the reason black women are often seen frantically patting their head like no other group of people on earth. This is also the reason black women are known for refusing to swim at a beach or in a pool. And we aren't even talking about black women's well-known obsession with fake eyelashes glued into their eyelids, fake eye contact that make their eyes look an artificial color, fake glued-in fingernails that fall off in your food, fake butt injections that black women are literally dying in hotel rooms for, fake pants inserts to make the hips and thighs look shapely, fake abdomen squeezers to make their fat stomachs look normal. It's enough to make a man's skin crawl to see them take all of these things off and then get into bed with him. But anyway, this fake hair and skin complexion problem with black women is so common that it has become epidemic in the black community. According to the global industry analysts, skin bleaching is a multi-billion-dollar global industry, but white people in America are not lightening their their skin. So it's almost exclusively black women who buy and use this stuff in America. In fact, the numbers speak for themselves because black women spend such an extremely large amount of their income to cover their real hair with fake white women's hair and lighten their skin with skin bleaching cream that even though most black women are poor and below the poverty line, according to Nielsen reports, black women spend 9 times as much money as any other race of women on hair and skin appearance supplies in beauty supply stores. Yet, even with all of the welfare entitlement payments granted to them, black women squander the entitlement money to such a degree that, according to the National Economic Development and Law Center, NEDLC, and Insight Center for Community Economic Development, their net worth is insanely less than black men. at exactly $5. What black women's net worth is $5. Nielsen reports state that 85% of all money spent on hair and beauty supplies in the United States are by black women. In fact, according to market research firm Mintel, black women spend $500 billion on fake hair, which is more than enough to pay for all forms of welfare received by black women, since according to the Cato report, the U.S. spends a total of $1 trillion a year on all forms of welfare for all people in the entire United States. Number 4. Black women see themselves as above black men, like a racist white man. Despite the fact that black men are the only group of people known for being lynched in large numbers for false allegations of assault on women, specifically white women, knowing the devastating effects such as imprisonment, inability to get a job for the rest of his life, and the rest of the stigma that it will have on black men, black women have not made themselves known for being the one group of people who do not make these false allegations on black men. In fact, according to the Department of Justice, black women filed 35% more domestic violence cases against black men than white women against white men. Yet there are no hospital or social service records for the same percentage of black female accusers because black women simply couldn't even be bothered with it once they made their accusations. In fact, according to the SAVE or SAVE organization, approximately 70% of all allegations of domestic violence made by women against men during an attempt to gain child support from him were false, and this includes both black and white women. Again, knowing that black men are the only group of people known for being falsely imprisoned and lynched in large numbers for false allegations of assault on women, specifically white women, it would seem that black women would be the one group of people known for refusing to falsely accuse black men of domestic violence and assault. However, there are no known reports of black women refuse to do this, and in fact, there are countless news reports of black women calling the police on black men, which lead to their death by police or false imprisonment. For proof of this, just Google Marcus Jeter, who is an innocent black man who was nearly killed by a lynch mob group of police after his black girlfriend, called the police on him to win some trivial argument. Only a dummy has trouble seeing that the white man has given this slave whip to black women and coaches her as she gleefully uses it against black men, like the slave master title is passed down to her. It's the reason the only black men who allow black women to call them a nigger are low-life thugs from the hood who have no sense of decency and pride, while regular decent strong black men absolutely do not tolerate it. If you are a white guy or someone from outside of the progressive black community who are honestly unaware of this, just go ask one of your black male friends. If you're cool with him, he will tell you. But the reason we don't allow black women to refer to us using the N-word is because black women use the word nigger the same way racist white men use it, only when they are trying to demean you as beneath them. While you let that sink in, I'll give you more proof that black women have adopted the agenda and mindset of a racist white man. Black women willingly place their own male children right into the hands of racist police officers to be murdered. In fact, the recently seemingly epidemic of black men being murdered by racist police officers during routine traffic stops is nothing new. Black men are the undisputed authority of managing police during routine traffic stops without being murdered, and passing this down from father to son for generations, because they have been dealing with this from day one. Anyone who tries to question this fact will expose their true racist intentions because everybody knows this. However, since black women have removed black men from the home, black boys are raised by their mothers and to think and act as illogically as her by belligerently yelling and screaming at an obviously racist man with a gun who clearly means him no good, and ending up dead instead of using rational, time-tested techniques to improve his chance of overcoming this potentially life and death situation as a black man. Then after he is murdered due to his own mother's failure to prepare her son with the strategies necessary to handle these racist cops, namely a good decent father in the home, the most absurd thing happens. Even though getting attention from others does nothing for her dead son, black mothers then go out and protest for attention for themselves as the mother of a dead black man murdered by police. Common sense would tell any rational person to go out of their way to do the things to protect their son from murder before he's murdered instead of protesting for attention after he is dead. But then again, we are talking about the typical Willie Lynch-minded black woman. This is why there are so many black men who have rationally come to the logical conclusion that black women are programmed to destroy the black community like a ruthless terminator who doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear and who absolutely will not stop ever until they are dead. To confirm the fact that there are countless black men who have now come to this conclusion, simply Google Tommy Sotomayor, a black man who coined the analogy, and read the many thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of comments by black men, specifically in the comment section of his YouTube videos, confirming this. After that, if you still can't see that black women have chosen to be the paid hand of the white man in the destruction of the black man, the black family, and thus the black community, you just don't want to see. There is a ton of facts that clearly demonstrates the fact that black women consider it very important to be viewed as above black men like a slave master. Here's more. Most women obtain a college degree for the primary purpose of earning more money. And then they go out and they go get married. They go on to get married after their degree. Even though, according to the U.S. Census, more women obtain college degrees than men in every race. However, black women claim that they are so strong that they don't need a man and view a college degree as some sort of validation of that dysfunctional mantra. Proof of this is the fact that according to the Brookings Institute, unlike all other races of women with college degrees who go on to get married after they get a college degree, black women with a college degree are less likely to get married once they obtain their degree. Number 5. Black women don't take responsibility for their own actions and behaviors. At this point, any attempt to have an honest conversation with black women and show them the error in their ways only results in pointless excuses, belligerence, refusal to accept the obvious, and attempts to evade the conversation. It's the reason for the existence of the incredibly ignorant phrase repeated by black women and black women only, "Yo mama black," which has come to be known as a typical response of black women when the black man attempts to show her behavior is self-destructive. For those outside of the black community, I know it sounds absurd, and that's because it is, but to prove that it is true, just ask any black person or Google the words "Yo mama black," and I can guarantee that you will quickly see for yourself. This phrase that black women use, "Yo mama black," means that although a black man is correctly pointing out the dysfunctional behavior of black women, he should be ignored by black women because he does not have the right to point it out, because it means he is referring to his own mother too. It's a prepubescent type strategy that black women resort to in order to evade owning up to the results of her own actions and behaviors, which is one of the reasons they never overcome the dysfunctional behaviors taught to them by their own black mothers who raised them. Another slogan black women have become known for using to try to stop black men from speaking out against the well-known black woman behavior problem is, "Not all black women are like that." Obviously, this phrase is absurd because it means that although the statistics prove that the vast, overwhelming majority of black women are indeed like that, as long as there are a few who are not like that, the problem is not serious enough to address, and that it is only a problem in the black community when every single black woman is like that. But what's more obvious to you and me is that this is clearly a ridiculous mantra and slogan, because it means black men should not try to speak out on the black woman behavior problem or attempt to correct it, and should let them continue their behavior that is sabotaging the black family and thus the black community until, in fact, all black women are like that, which obviously would be too late to fix, and then they could continue this dysfunctional behavior without answering for it forever. This is just another example of how black women go out of their way to avoid taking responsibility for their own actions and behaviors. Taking responsibility for one's own actions and behaviors is the most basic thing a person can do to correct their own self-destructive behaviors, and the vast majority of black women refuse to take responsibility even for what they put in their own mouths, as is evidenced by the fact that 80 to 90% of black women are overweight and obese. This is 100% preventable. 100% preventable by simply taking responsibility for what you put in your mouth. Furthermore, according to the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, 50% of black women have herpes. I said that correctly. 50% of black women have herpes. Look it up. And black women have the highest percentage of new cases of HIV, despite the fact that everybody knows how to prevent it, which again demonstrates how black women's unwillingness to take responsibility for what they put in their own vaginas. Furthermore, since obesity is 100% preventable by simply being responsible for what you put in your mouth, and 70 to 80% of black women are fat or obese, there is no question that the overwhelming vast majority of black women don't even take responsibility for what they put in their mouth. Would you like more proof that black women do not take responsibility for their own self-destructive behavior? In the black community, black women actually try to make men who have no bastard children feel guilty for not doing what they call stepping up. For those that are not in the black community, this stepping up that black women refer to means a responsible man who has no bastard children taking legal and financial responsibility for the children of a black woman that she had with another man. To just about everyone else, this is a disgusting attempt to avoid taking responsibility for one's actions again. But to black women, this is apparently a normal thing. And if you never heard of the phrase, Google the phrase black men stepping up, or just go ask any black woman. If you are from the black community, you already know this. So if you're a black person pretending that this phrase does not exist in the black community, get the fuck out of here. You just expose yourself as a liar, because it is too well known to fake that you are oblivious to this. An actual example of the depths to to which black women will avoid responsibility for their own actions is the parade of black women on Maury Povich's show taking DNA tests saying that they are not sexually promiscuous, and then being told that the man she claimed to be 1000% sure is the father of her bastard child is not the father. And then coming back as a guest on the show on multiple other occasions with a different man each time and being told the same thing. For example, there was a 20-year-old black woman who had sex with a 13-year-old black boy, accused him of impregnating her and demanding payment from him through the mother. And instead of his black mother filing criminal charges for rape of her son, she took the boy on Maury Povich's show and said if her 13-year-old child is the father of this adult woman's child, she will make him pay child support money to the woman who repeatedly raped him as a child in order to get his sperm. The child molesting black woman said she chose to make him a 13-year-old father by having his child, and said she was not sorry for robbing him of his childhood innocence, all while saying she needs him to pay her child support money. In fact, if the baby came from the 13-year-old boy's sperm and she filed for child support, as she claimed she would, this boy would be required under the law to pay it until the baby turns 18, even though he is 13. In a moment of lucky fortune for this little boy, DNA evidence proved that the black woman's child was not the boy's, which means not only was she raping a child, but she was simultaneously having sex with at least one other man. The corrupt court system assisted in destroying this young black boy's innocence and allowed the two black women to avoid taking responsibility for their own self-serving actions because criminal charges were never filed. So the child molesting black woman never went to jail, and custody was not taken from this clearly bad mother. This is what you call a deadbeat mother. Even when DNA evidence proves that a man is not the father of her child, black women will try to escape responsibility for attempting to extort child support money from him. If she used the false allegations to obtain welfare benefits before the DNA cleared the man, black women will refuse to pay the money back to the state. If you are somehow unaware of this and want specific examples of this, just Google Carnell Alexander, a black man in Detroit who was fraudulently accused by a black woman of being the only man who could have been the father of her children. DNA cleared him, yet the court told him if he doesn't pay $30,000 to this woman, he would lose his freedom and be locked in prison. The black woman responsible for all of this disappeared. Due to black women making themselves known for going out of their way to have bastard children in order to place the father on court-ordered child support payments to her, which will destroy him financially, land him in prison, or possibly life and death struggle with the police, many black men see black women as a serious risk and threat to their own actual safety and freedom. A specific example of this is the unfortunate murder of the black man Walter Scott by police officer Michael Slager. Walter Scott found himself in a freedom or death struggle at a traffic stop for a broken tail light and chose to risk his death for freedom. And the decision cost him his life because the police officer shot him in the back and killed him as he ran away. Walter Scott's decision to attempt to run for his freedom was because a black woman colluded with the system to put him on unaffordable child support payments to her. And he knew he would be locked up behind bars for it if he didn't get away from that racist police officer. These facts can all be easily verified in seconds by a simple Google search. For those who still don't get it, just Google Marcus Jeter story. It's a horrific, real life and death, real experience of a completely innocent black man who was assaulted by multiple police and horribly beaten, narrowly escaping becoming another statistic of murdered black man by police and thrown in jail after his girlfriend and her sister called the police on him in order to win a trivial argument, even though she knows, just like everyone else does, how police are murdering black men. Lucky for Mr. Jeter, he lived. And it was all caught on camera. But it was years before the whole thing was resolved in court. The bottom line is that black women have successfully made themselves a liability to the very health and safety of black men, because black men are being placed in jails and killed due to the actions of black women that they are involved in. Number 6. Black women are self-centered to the point of delusion and place themselves above everyone else, including their own children. Most black women are horrible mothers who care about trivial things for themselves more than they care about their own children. The evidence of this is the fact that despite the incredibly long list of convenient birth control methods available only to women, and the fact that not giving her child a good father will almost certainly ruin her child's life, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, black women still choose to turn 70 to 80% of all black children into bastards anyway by having a child of a man that she knows does not want her as a wife or to be responsible for her children. And again, this can easily be confirmed based on the numbers of black women who have out-of-wedlock children and the numbers of black women who clearly claim that the only way the hand-picked father of her bastard children will help her financially support the child is if she brings the court system in to force him to. Furthermore, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, although black women have more bastard children than all races of people, 60% of all black women who have at least one bastard child by one man also have multiple bastard children by multiple men, which means doing such a horrible thing to her child was not done by mistake, but in order to receive free welfare money and child support money for herself, she must produce a child without a father in the home. And this is why manipulation of the corrupt child support system has become known as the black woman's hustle. I can't make this stuff up. Don't take my word for it. Go Google it yourself. Black women also raise their sons to have extreme value for things that are typically only important to women, such as fashion, instead of giving them a father to teach them to use logic and make adult decisions like young men. Evidence of this is the fact that it only takes a quick peruse through the latest news reports of black male teenagers murdering people over the latest fashionable Jordan sneakers, or the very well-known phenomenon of teenage males walking like a toddler with a soiled diaper in public, because they purposely pull their pants down to sag below their buttocks to stand out as a fashion statement instead of representing themselves as a masculine young man with discernment. Although it is widely known that education is the greatest key to success in society, black women are the primary factor behind the poor education of black children. The compelling evidence for this is that although black women falsely claim to be the most educated group in America, the children of those black single mothers are actually statistically the least educated group of people in America. And this is actually verified not only by all standardized test scores across the United States, but by the ratings of the schools that their mothers allow them to attend, which is where the standardized tests are taken by these children. Furthermore, $500 billion is mathematically more than enough money to send all black children in the United States of America to private elementary school, middle school, high school, and college every single year, an almost guaranteed ticket out of poverty that their mother chose to bring them into without a father. Yet again, according to the Mintel market research firm, this is the amount of money black women spend every year to glue fake white women's hair in their scalp instead. But wait, here's more proof that black women will hurt their children in order to serve themselves. Instead of giving their children fathers in the home, black women actually allow their own children to give them a Father's Day card on Father's Day. Let me say that again. Instead of giving their children fathers in the home, black women actually allow their own children to give them a Father's Day card on Father's Day. In fact, so much money is made by this practice of black women that Hallmark actually makes Father's Day cards specifically for black women in order to profit off of black women's self-serving behavior at the expense of their own children. I cannot make this stuff up. Everybody knows this stuff. But like I said before, if you were somehow unaware of this information, don't just take my word for it. Go look it up on Google. It's easy. In fact, black women's lack of shame for their self-serving behavior of not giving their children fathers in the home is evident by the fact that black women will marry themselves before accepting that she needs to change and become the type of woman that a decent man would want to marry. Just Google black woman marries herself. It would be funny if it weren't actually true, but unfortunately, it is. Number 7. Black women teach their children backward and self-destructive values. It is well known that parents teach their children how to choose good mates, and children learn what is normal and acceptable from their parents' example more than their words. But since, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the vast, overwhelming majority of black women choose to have children without husbands in the home as fathers for their children, the female child's only teacher and example is their mother. So the lack of the ability to discern good men from bad men was taught to black women as a child by their own mothers, who let them see the same kind of guys going in and out of the door as she was growing up. Black women teach their female children to copy their own promiscuity as a way to attract the worst men, instead of teaching their female children that good men value them for their femininity, physical beauty, and nurturing personality. Black women also teach their female children that men value them for the same things that they value men for: house, car, job, bank account, which sets them up for failure as an adult looking for a good husband. This is all well known to everyone, but for proof of this, just ask any black woman what makes them a good catch to a man. It's not a mystery that they will start talking about some degree on their wall, the fact that they have their own car or their own house, or how much they make at their job. But they never mention possessing anything that men actually value from a woman that makes her wife material. In fact, more evidence that black women teach their female children to reproduce their own sexually confused promiscuity is the fact that black women have made themselves known for dressing sexually inappropriately in public, even in the presence of their own children. This behavior is so extremely well known in the black community that anyone who pretends to be unaware of this, if you're black, will immediately expose yourself as a liar. And just like it is stated in the Willie Lynch method, black women now raise their sons to be dependent on them, so they will praise them like God. The evidence of this is that now there are actually groups of confused adult black men who embarrassed themselves by dressing up in raggedy homemade costumes, walking down the streets, public streets, screaming that God is a black woman. And although clearly confused and trying to figure out who they are in this world, they actually try to live their life that way. They call themselves various names like the Hebrew Israelites. Go look them up yourself. I'm not making this up. The one good thing about them is that many of these men eventually find their way, and then they leave these silly groups. Another clear example of how black women teach their children backward values is the BET situation. Black Entertainment Television. BET was created, run, and owned by black people, and their programming reflected respectable, positive images for the black community. Examples are the BET News, or BET Tonight with Tavis Smiley, or shows like Teen Summit, etc. However, BET was sold to Viacom in 2000, and these programs were canceled almost immediately and replaced with extremely disgusting and degenerate programming targeted for the black family and community. Actual examples are Meet the Browns, House of Pain, reruns of Love and Hip Hop, etc. By the way, the same thing happened to the once respectable magazine Essence that exclusively targets black women. It was bought by non-black companies, and once it was no longer black owned, it almost immediately began producing what it produces now, known in the black community as coonery and buffoonery. If you don't know what this term means, as black people say, you better go ask somebody. Anyway, even the original owners of BET stated that they don't watch BET and instruct their children not to watch BET because it insults the black people's intelligence with its disgusting programming. In fact, according to the Parents Television Council, BET targets black children and teens with gratuitous sexual, violent, and profane content. Now, the truth is that just because a television station is targeting you with disgusting images that are not suitable for you or your family doesn't mean that you have to watch it. All you have to do to immediately destroy their efforts to bring negative images of you into your home is to turn the channel. But the fact is that according to Nielsen, the largest demographic of BET viewers is black women and children. And since 70 to 80% of all black children are being raised by black women, it means that black women allow their own children's mind to be programmed with self-destructive images by allowing them to watch BET. Number 8. Most black women are extremely sexually promiscuous, embrace the whore and slut lifestyle, and enjoy having sex with low-life men. Black women have made themselves known for attempting to somehow avoid taking responsibility for her own actions of sexual promiscuity and choosing to spread her legs for vaginal insemination and impregnation by men who she is not married to and who she herself claims is a deadbeat when she files for child support, even though the obvious fact is that her sexual activities are her own responsibility. Otherwise, the man would be charged with rape. And clearly, the mothers of these bastard children that black women choose to have were not victims of rape. In fact, this is evidenced by the fact that black women have made themselves known for using the phrase, "It takes two to make a baby," as an attempt to dilute their blameworthiness by spreading the blame onto others for her own behavior as an excuse for choosing to bring more bastard children into the black community. when the fact is that it takes two people to have promiscuous sex. But the fact is also that it only takes one person to decide to turn that sexual promiscuity into a live human child without a father in his or her life. And that person, of course, is the woman, because men obviously have no say in choosing to or not to have a child. And in fact, if a man unilaterally chooses to cause a woman to spontaneously abort a child, he would be charged with murder. Yet currently, black women kill more black people through abortion than all other causes of the death of black people combined. And that includes cancer, heart attacks, car accidents, drive-by shootings, stabbings, strokes, police killings, etc., which is the reason the name Black Genocide has been given to this. Black women are so integrally involved in this genocide of black people that in 1970, a black feminist, Faye Wattleton, was personally selected by Margaret Sanger, the original founder of the abortion giant Planned Parenthood, which kills more babies than all other entities combined, to take over as the president of the entire organization in order to target black women and use them to start black genocide through mass abortion. In fact, Margaret Sanger herself says she advocates for abortion to eugenically cleanse the population by specifically decreasing the population of what she considers undesirable black people in America. I can't make this stuff up, like I said. This woman's plans were insidious against black people. But for evidence, just Google her writings or the phrase, the Negro Project, for yourself. Anyway, this black woman that she recruited, Faye Wattleton, accepted the position and worked with the government to create laws and policies to make sure that Planned Parenthood will be paid by the government and health insurance corporations to continue their agenda, while she placed extremely disproportionately high percentages of their abortion clinics in black communities. In fact, although black people only make up 12% of the U.S. population, almost half, according to the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, CURE, 79% of all surgical abortions are in the black community. In fact, black women have more abortions than all other races of women. The very fact that black women are having that many unwanted abortions, yet still so many bastard children, provides objective evidence of the fact that black women are the most sexually promiscuous women in the entire United States. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 70 to 80% of all black children are living with a mother who did not provide them with a father in the home. But beside the fact that the only person who can make the unilateral choice to do this to their own children is the mother and not the father, one of the many pieces of evidence that black women are the culprits to their own bastard epidemic in the black community is the fact that, according to the CDC, while black women have far more out-of-wedlock children than any other group of people in America, only 24% of black men have a child out of wedlock. This is referred to by many as the 80-20 rule in the black community. In other words, the vast, overwhelming majority of black women are having these bastard children by the same small number of men in the bottom 20% of men in the black community. It's the reason 78 bastard children can come from 3 low-life black men and 46 black women. This sounds unbelievable to a person who does not know how black women operate, but it is in fact true. In fact, Google Terry Turnage, Richard M. Colbert, and Desmond Hatchett. You will see news reports of these 3 black men, 46 black women, and their 78 bastard children. These three men are from the lowest level of men in the black community, but these men are the kind of men that black women chase after. In fact, 46 black women repeatedly chose them as the fathers to their 78 bastard children. That's 78 future carjackers, murderers, bastard makers, and hood rats running the black community into the ground the way they had done for the past 40 plus years. Beating the horse into the ground, here's another example involving one man and hundreds of thousands of black women. There's a street gang member named Jeremy Meeks in prison for the usual gang-related felonies involving guns and other typical gang bangers. His prison mugshot has tattoos all over his neck and face and can easily be found on the internet, along with his rap sheet. And there's no question that he is obviously the typical gang-banging, low-life thug. Now, anyone with basic common sense will tell you that it's obvious that this guy is going nowhere in life and is not a good man. He is clearly not husband material and certainly not the kind of man you would give to your child as their father. And anyone can see that this is not a good man. However, there is one group of women who are known for believing all good black men are in prison, remember? And so they say they would like to have this monster as their boyfriend or baby's daddy. In fact, this monster is a well-known heartthrob among that group of women. That group of women, of course, are black women. This is another example of the 80-20 rule in the black community. For proof of this, just search this gangbanger's name on Twitter and watch the disgusting comments of thousands upon thousands of black females. You still need more evidence? Google Tavon White, a low-life criminal, the leader of a prison gang, and another typical member of the lowest 20% of males in the black community. While in prison for the typical reasons lowlifes are in prison for, in a perfect example of the 80-20 rule in the black community, 4 black female prison guards wanted to be romantically involved with this lowlife so much and to such an extent that all 4 let him fuck them unprotected so they could get pregnant with his child. And in fact, 4 did actually get pregnant with this lowlife child. And 2 got his name tattooed on their neck and other parts of the body. In fact, there were 13 black female prison guards involved with this lowlife altogether. But let's provide more proof for the dummies out there who still don't get it. Based on the numbers of black women filing for paternity tests to determine who the father of her children is, yet do not get awarded court-ordered child support according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, black women are the largest percentage of women who do not know who the father of their own children are. This confused and out-of-control promiscuous behavior of black women is so insidiously taught to their children that, according to the Williams Institute, unlike all other races, the majority of homosexuals in the black community are women. Yet, according to the CDC, most black lesbians, 51%, actually gave birth to children at one time and currently raising them without a father in the home. Think about how sexually confused that is, how it is taught to their innocent children, and how it would be virtually impossible for a child to overcome being raised like that. A person really has to be extremely self-centered to do this to their own children. It should make any decent person sick to the stomach. As a matter of fact, hold on a second, I think I'm gonna vomit. This sexually depraved behavior is taught to black girls by older black women, which is why the older black women are just as sexually promiscuous as the younger ones. For example, just Google Deborah Flowers Haggerty, a 55-year-old black woman with HIV who nearly gave a 12-year-old black boy HIV by forcing him to have sex with her. You heard that. A 55-year-old black woman with HIV nearly gave a 12-year-old black boy HIV by forcing him to have sex with her. Luckily for the boy, he was given a clean bill of health when he was tested for HIV. No word on other STDs though. In fact, to confirm how much black women embrace the whore and slut lifestyle, just Google the words ass shaking in public. Your computer screen will immediately be overrun, specifically with black females from prepubescent age all the way up to grown women spreading open their legs, crawling on the ground, humping poles, grinding their crotch on poles, bending over, exposing their private parts and their asses, all in order to simulate being fucked in public. It's not like they are dancing at some raunchy party, because it's usually done in a bathroom or in front of a mirror while holding a phone camera in order to upload it onto the internet to get sexual attention from total strangers, which is exactly what a whore or prostitute does. The only difference is that real prostitutes do it for money, while most black women just do it for attention. Black women do this whorish behavior so much that an actual word had to be created specifically to name it. And in case you have been living on the moon for the past 10 years, the word is known as twerking. Number 9. Black women have become a financial drain on everybody. Black women are a financial drain on society, and this is evidenced by the fact that, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, U.S. Department of Commerce, and the Cato Institute, 40% of welfare recipients are black women. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 20 to 25% of all women are on government food stamps. This translates to the fact that, according to the Department of Health and Human Services, 30 to 40% of all food stamps in the United States of America are consumed by black women and their children, more than any other race. Yet, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, African Americans only make up 12% of the total U.S. population. In fact, according to the National Bureau of Economic Research and the National Institute of Health, black women are such a financial drain on society that the vast, overwhelming majority of black women who are on welfare due to the inability to financially support her children remain on welfare throughout their children's lives as dependents, and their children eventually end up on some form of welfare as adults. Some refer to these women as welfare queens. The irony of the queen terminology should be evident. An example of this is Angel Yulee Adams. Look her up. The black woman in Florida who had 16 bastard children by 3 different baby daddies while living in absolute abject poverty on welfare, and had the nerve to complain that the government is not doing enough to provide for her. The woman famously said, "Somebody needs to take responsibility and pay for all my kids." There's a phrase in the black community that goes, "Child support system is a black woman's hustle." Obviously, this phrase would not exist if black women didn't selectively choose to search out men who do not want to be responsible for her children, have sex with these men to get pregnant with his sperm, and then have the child in order to go to the government and extract welfare benefits and child support payments to her from any work wages he is paid for the next 18 years for each of the children she has. Anyone with basic common sense would see that if this were not so, black women who choose to have children without fathers would simply go to a sperm bank to get pregnant. It's not rocket science unless you have a very low intelligence level. Number 10. Black women are jealous of white women. Black women have now become known for using various underhanded tactics to try to force black men to have no choice but to be with them, instead of doing like all other races of women and simply being the decent feminine woman that a black man or any man actually wants to be with. For specific examples, black women now openly attempt to destroy the life and career of any successful or wealthy black man who dates or marries a white woman. Proof of this is the fact that black women in general try to destroy the career of the talented writer and director and producer and star of the important movie Birth of a Nation, Nate Parker, because they simply discovered that his wife was white. Black women went on talk shows en masse, falsely accusing him of rape and joining with racist white men calling for a boycott of his movie. And this is especially disturbing to me as a black man because the movie in question, the historic account of the Nat Turner slave revolt, was very important for the progression of the black community. This exact same thing happened with the actor Michael B. Jordan when black women discovered that his girlfriend was simply white. The same thing happened to the actor Mike Coulter, who played Luke Cage, when black women found out that his wife was white. The same thing happened to the Hollywood actor Jesse Williams when he divorced a black woman and his girlfriend was white. And again, very disturbing because Jesse Williams unwisely used his celebrity to champion black women in the media. The same thing happened to the actor Taye Diggs. Another example is Tyrese and Kevin Hart, the two wealthy black male celebrities who black women en masse threatened to boycott because they simply allowed white women to be in the same photo as them. And the list is too long to go on and on and on, but can easily be verified by a quick internet search. Number 11. Black women work against black men to destroy her own community. Black women have become such completely out of control enemies to the progression of the black community that they no longer even try to hide their treachery to black men and openly try to bring down black men who attempt to fix the problems in the black community that black women have caused. For example, similar to the black men who stepped up to address the problems in the black community in the 1960s, strong and intelligent black men today have recognized the fact that this black woman behavior problem has reached such an epidemic level that it has destroyed the black community. Since mainstream media will not allow a platform for these strong, intelligent black men, these black men have started to create YouTube video channels in large numbers for the past few years to speak on the now well-known black woman behavior problem through videos in order to convince black women of the need to change or to advise their young black fatherless male children to avoid black women if they do not stop their behavior. And their videos have been overwhelmingly supported by African American men to the tune of millions of votes on YouTube. Real life examples of these YouTube video channels are Tommy Sotomayor, Kirigaki Jones, Obsidian Media Network, Ringo TV, O'Shea Duke Jackson, Sergeant Willie Pete, K Solon Black, Rom Wheels, Thug Titian, The Black Authority, David Carroll, Mad Bus Driver, For Us Men, Black Ram for Vengeance, Escape Black Men, Solo TV 84, Philco vs. The World, Reluctant Nabi, Jay DeBlack, The League of Dads, The Angry Man Channel, Minister Jap, Tariq Nasheed, and many more. However, instead of changing their behaviors or at least acknowledging the concern of black men for the sake of the black community, black women created a list of these channels and in large numbers repeatedly false flagged or falsely reported the channels as hate speech to YouTube in order to have the channels automatically removed and silence the positive message, the necessary message that these black men put forth for our community. Many of the channels that these black men created were indeed successfully removed, as black women in large numbers rejoiced. Not surprisingly, some of these black men finally gave up on black women after all, and joined the ranks of black men who avoid black women and simply give them the wall of silence. Some simply started over making more videos about the black woman behavior problem. Some reloaded their videos back onto YouTube, and some created their own websites to load the videos onto the internet in a place where black women could not sabotage the message. In fact, examples of some of these websites are SlayingEvil.com, the Angry Man Channel, the Negro Manosphere, and TommySotomayor.com. Although it may sound unbelievable that black women would go to this extreme in a useless attempt to hide their already well-known self-destructive and self-dysfunctional behavior, proof of all of this, including the actual full list created by black women, the main black woman behind it, the videos, the newly created websites for black men, and the evidence that their YouTube channels were indeed actually removed is easily and extremely easy to obtain by a simple Google or YouTube search. Number 12. The toxic attitude and lack of femininity of black women has reached a level that is intolerable to all decent people. There was a time when black women were known for two things: their ability to cook a big meal that would make a man want to run home for dinner, and their warm, feminine, caring, and nurturing personality. Now, just like it's nearly impossible to find a black woman who doesn't refuse to cook for her man, or even knows how to cook, it's nearly impossible to find a black woman who has a warm, feminine, caring, or nurturing demeanor. In fact, black women have made themselves known as the exact opposite and having the absolute worst attitudes than any other group of people, male or female. Anyone who's gone to the DMV, to the post office, drive-through window, or checkout counter anywhere in the entire United States will readily educate you of how disturbingly unpleasant the experience was if the person on the other side of the counter was a black woman. In fact, the angry black woman behavior is so well known that there is really no need to devote much time to this because everybody already knows about it. And anyone who attempts to deny its existence will again immediately expose themselves as just dishonest. Not even black women deny this problem, but they do make an excuse for it. In fact, the well-known quote, "You just can't handle a strong black woman," is used exclusively by black women as an excuse for their attitude problem. No other combination of race or gender uses a term like this, but everyone has heard it from black women. Again, this dysfunctional quote is so well known that anyone who pretends that they haven't heard it will immediately expose themselves as a fraud. The fact is that only things that are extremely bad for you, such as poisonous snakes, rabies-infected dogs, and hazardous waste need to be handled. No man wants a woman like that. Apparently, everyone gets this except for black women, because no one says this kind of quote except black women. No one. In fact, on the contrary, the unavoidable fact is that black women are not known for phrases like, "I'm a good black woman who values family," or "I'm a humble black woman who is a helpmate to my man," or "I'm a soft-spoken black woman who is proud of my own natural femininity," or "I'm a conscious black woman who cares about my own community," or "I'm a truthful black woman who is honest with myself and others. Or I'm a caring black woman who nurtures my children. Or I'm a loyal black woman who depends on my husband. Or I'm a considerate black woman who respects others. Or I'm a black woman who knows how to cook. Or I'm a faithful black woman who honors marriage. Or even I'm a loving black woman who is a helpmate to my husband. Black women have made themselves become known for being intolerably loud and belligerent, as is evidenced by the fact that if you search the words loud and belligerent woman on YouTube, the vast overwhelming majority of videos will be real actual black women in public being that exact way, even though black women only make up about 8% of the population. Black women have made themselves known for not valuing the presence of a male in the family unit, as is evidenced by the well-known phrase, of course, used exclusively by black women, which is, of course, I'm a strong, independent black woman who don't need no man. Black women have made themselves known for embarrassing themselves and the black community by not only watching but being paid to behave like wretched ghetto whores and modern-day blackface tap-dancing caricatures on television in front of the world. Evidence of this are black reality shows that are targeted to black women, such as Basketball Wives and Love and Hip Hop and Married to Medicine, Bad Girls Club, Sorority Sisters, Real Housewives of Atlanta, Flavor of Love, etc. In fact, unlike the name implies, these black women are typically unmarried single mothers. Number 13. There is no real difference between the hood rat black woman and the educated black woman. The black woman behavior problem would not be anywhere near as devastating to the black community if it was just a certain group of black women who behave that way. And the reason is because everyone could just simply avoid dealing with them. It doesn't matter if they are wealthy or poor, educated or uneducated. The typical behavior of black women permeates through all subgroups of black women. And there are very few black women who are not like that. So you can't just deal with one group of them and feel safe that you are escaping dealing with the black woman behavior problem. The educated black woman and the hood rat black woman typically demonstrate the same predictable dysfunctional behavior. Here's the evidence. Both have high numbers of bastard children. And the evidence is the fact that they both are included in that demographic of disgustingly high percent of black unmarried mothers. They both behave in the typical belligerent manner known as the angry black woman behavior. An example of this is the fact that although educated, when told to leave the White House because of her behavior in it, Omarosa Manigault behaves in the same belligerent way as that black chick on YouTube who had to be tasered to make her shut the fuck up and leave the local hood flea market because of her behavior in it. In fact, the educated black woman and the hood rat black woman both somehow can't see how incredibly absurd and ignorant walking around with that helmet made of fake hair looks glued to her scalp, especially when standing next to someone of another race with their real hair. The proof of this is the fact that they both still share in the $500 billion spent on fake hair in the United States. Both dress in sexually inappropriate manner, whether in the streets or in the office. Anyone working in a business office with a black woman can testify to this. In fact, it is so well known that if a person tries to pretend that they are unaware of this, again, you will expose yourself as a liar, because everybody knows this. Everybody. Both the hood rat and the professional black woman partake in welfare in one way or another, whether it's government-sponsored free child daycare, free Section 8 housing, government-issued EBT card for extra money on the side, or the countless other methods of receiving welfare payments from the government. And the proof is in the fact that black women participating in these programs in extremely high numbers, even though they say they are the most educated group of people in the United States. They both voluntarily choose to receive sperm from the lowest 20% of men in the black community, the small minority of low-life thugs. Proof of this is the 80-20 rule, of course, in the black community, and the census statistics that show that so many black women have children with no fathers, and so few black men have children at all. Both collude with the government to put the father of their children in the system for child support. They both try to make excuses for the black woman behavior problem. If you want proof and you are watching this on YouTube, just look in the comment section for the excuses black women try to give. This will be instantly confirmed. They both refuse to take responsibility for their own behavior, such as what they put in their mouths or what they put in their vaginas. The CDC statistics showing black women as the uncontested highest rate of obesity and STDs will confirm this absolute fact. Number 14. Black women are too dysfunctional for marriage. At this point, based on the U.S. Census Bureau's calculation of the extremely small numbers of black women who are married to a man of any race, men of all races, including black men, are avoiding black women in high numbers. And the evidence of this are the fact that, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, black women are the least married group of people in America, and black women are the least chosen by other races of men, and there isn't even a close runner-up. In fact, black men avoid black women to such an extent that, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, black men marry other races of women more than any other race of men in America, while, based on evaluation of reports from the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, NCFMR, the National Center for Health Statistics, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, women initiate 80% of divorces nationally, regardless of race, and divorce percentage in the black community is 70%, which is much higher than the national average of 50%, and even higher than all other races, which means that black women initiate an extremely high number of divorces in the black family. An interesting fact is that, according to the U.S. Census, black women get separated less than any other group of people. And when you consider the fact that the government does not grant financial benefits for separation that they do for divorce, and the fact that, according to the U.S. Census, black women get divorced more than any other group, it makes perfect sense that very few black women get separated, but they get divorced instead. In fact, despite the fact that there are more black women than black men, and despite the fact that marriages in general are more important than women than men, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are more married black men than married black women. The black community is in such peril due to the aforementioned points that, according to the U.S. Census, only 45% of black homes have married couples. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau, even that number includes marriages of elder black couples who are still married from a different era when black women did not behave the way they do now. Number 15. Black women are now extremely violent. Wherever black women and their bastard children go in the United States, crime and violence follow. The evidence of this is the fact that cities with large numbers of unmarried black women with children, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, such as Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, Cleveland/Columbus, Memphis, Oakland/LA, Birmingham, and Atlanta, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, are all among the highest rates of murder, high school dropouts, rape, drugs, and general lawlessness, according to the U.S. Bureau of Justice statistics. In fact, most, if not all, are listed in the top 10 most dangerous cities to live in, according to Forbes. Additional evidence is that, according to the Journal of Research in Crime and Delinquency, the most reliable indicator of violent crime in a community is the proportion of single mother homes. Black women and violence are so synonymous that, according to the Department of Justice, 50% of black lesbians are involved in domestic violence with each other. And in fact, the group with the highest percentage of prison inmates are black women. Furthermore, according to the Vera Institute of Justice, 44% of women in prison are black women, even though they only make up approximately 8% of the U.S. population. And according to the Prison Policy Initiative and the ACLU, black women are the fastest growing group of prison inmates, even with documented extremely lax jail sentences versus black men with the same charges. Black women even know more people in prison than black men. Much more. In fact, according to the University of Washington, 44% of black women know someone in prison, while only 32% of black men do. Black women breed violence in their own children. Evidence of this is the fact that, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 70 to 80% of all black children are being raised without a father by black women who handpick the father of their children. And according to the U.S. Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, an extremely high percentage of them become involved in crime and drugs and intertwined in the criminal justice system. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, now represent 32% of children who are arrested, 42% of children who are detained, and 52% of children who are judicially waived to criminal court. In fact, black women are the major cause of the presence of inner city gangs and the violence that they cause. The evidence for this is the fact that the vast, overwhelming percentage of black children who join gangs are from black mother-only homes. According to the OJJDP, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, black women produce large numbers of bastard children before they are even mature enough to know how to raise children. And the evidence of this is the fact that, according to the CDC, teenage black pregnancy in the black community has reached epidemic proportions, 200% more than white teens, and that's with a 50% decrease within the past 10 years, according to the Department of Population and Family Health Sciences. Black women have made themselves known for being extremely violent, as evidenced by the fact that when searching the words "woman fighting in public," the vast, overwhelming number of search results will be black women embarrassing themselves and the black community by savagely fighting in the streets like animals. It is also evidenced by the previously stated fact that black women are the fastest growing group of prison inmates. And although black women only make up 8% of the entire U.S. population, half of all armed robberies and aggravated assaults committed by women are by black women. Furthermore, 1/3 of all victims of violent crimes by a woman describe their offenders as a black woman. As further proof of the typical non-feminine, violent behavior of black women, a quick Google search of news reports will reveal countless horrendous reports of black women being arrested for such things as killing their husband and barbecuing the body in the backyard, or taping her 3-year-old child to the wall as punishment for annoying her, or punching her child in the face, or murdering the child in order to exact revenge on the father for not wanting to be with her. Black women and her kids beating up innocent homeless men, and the list of news reports of black female violence goes on endlessly. So based on the evidence, black women in general are extremely violent. And according to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, lesbian/bisexual women have the highest percentage of domestic violence, specifically 44 to 61% of lesbian and bisexual women are involved in domestic violence with their chosen same-sex partners, which is more than 200% more than both regular heterosexual men and women. So when you superimpose these lesbian violence statistics and black female violence statistics together, it means that black lesbians perpetuate far more domestic violence than any group of people in America. And there isn't even a close second. Bastard baby producing black women are at the root cause of the epidemic of gang violence in the black community. The evidence of this is the fact that black male gangs, whose murders are of 93% of other black members of the black community, have become rampant in the black single mother infested inner cities like LA and Chicago. In fact, according to the U.S. Census Bureau of Justice Statistics, there is a correlation between the presence of black male gangbangers and being raised by single mothers. And according to Dr. Mike Carley's book, Into the Abyss, A Journey into the World of Street Gangs, gang members come from alienated and neglected homes, so they join gangs for their needs not being met at home. It's like former gang member Sheldon Thomas says, "Parent your children or a gang will." In case you're mentally slow and can't understand what this all means, I will spell out the obvious. Single black women produce bastard children who they raise to be gang bangers. Based on the previously stated facts, whether it is to use their children as income generators or have another human being who will unconditionally praise them, it is clear that black women have chosen to alienate black men and make the unilateral decision to have bastard children, then raise them alone without the input of fathers, and everyone knows what happens to children who are raised without fathers. But if you are somehow unaware, here are just a few of the well-known facts and statistics. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, U.S. Department of Health Census. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, 32 times the average. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes, Center for Disease Control. 80% of rapists with anger problems come from fatherless homes, Justice and Behavior. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes, National Principals Association report. Children with fathers who are involved are 40% less likely to repeat a grade in school. Children with fathers who are involved are 70% less likely to drop out of school. 70% of youths in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes, U.S. Department of Justice. 85% of all youths in prison come from fatherless homes, Fulton County, Georgia, Texas, Department of Correction. Children with fathers who are involved are more likely to get A's in school. Children with fathers who are involved are more likely to enjoy school and engage in extracurricular activities. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. Youths in father-absent households have significantly higher odds of incarceration than those in mother and father families. A 2002 Department of Justice survey of 7,000 inmates revealed that 39% of jailed inmates lived in mother-only households. Approximately 46% of jailed inmates in 2002 had a previously incarcerated family member. 1/5 experienced a father in prison or jail. A study of 109 juvenile offenders indicated that family structure significantly predicts delinquency and adolescence, and particularly in boys in single-parent families were at higher risk of status, property, and personal delinquency. A study of 13,986 women in prison showed that more than half grew up without their father. Compared to living with both parents, living in a single-parent home doubles the risk that a child will suffer physical, emotional, and educational neglect. The overall rate of child abuse and neglect in single-parent households is 27.3 children per 1,000, whereas the rate of overall maltreatment in two-parent households is 15. Daughters of single mothers without fathers involved are 53% more likely to marry as teenagers, 71% more likely to have children as teenagers, 164% more likely to have a premarital birth, and 92% more likely to get divorced themselves. Adolescent girls raised in a two-parent home with involved fathers are significantly less likely to be sexually active than girls raised without involved fathers. 90% of homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes, U.S. DHHS Bureau of Census. 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes. I said 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes, criminal justice and behavior. 71% of pregnant teenagers lack a father, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes, U.S. DHHS Bureau of Census. 85% of children who exhibit behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes, Center for Disease Control. 90% of adolescent repeat arsonists lived with only their mother. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes, National Principals Association reports. 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutes have no father, U.S. Department of Justice. 85% of youths in prisons grew up in fatherless homes. Fatherless boys and girls twice likely to drop out of high school, twice likely to end up in jail, and 4 times more likely to need help for emotional or behavior problems, U.S. DHHS. Children with involved, loving fathers are significantly more likely to do well in school, have healthy self-esteem, exhibit empathy and pro-social behavior, and avoid high-risk behavior such as drugs, truancy, and criminal activity compared to children with uninvolved fathers. Fathers who live with their children are more likely to have a close, enduring relationship with their children than those who do not. Compared to children within marriage, children born to cohabitating parents are 3 times as likely to experience father absence, and children born to unmarried cohabitating parents are 4 times as likely to live in a father-absent home. Children who live absent their biological fathers are on average at least 200 to 300% more likely to be poor, to use drugs, to experience educational, health, and emotional and behavior problems, to be victims of child abuse, and to engage in criminal behaviors that their peers who live with their married biological parents do not. And these numbers include all races of kids raised without fathers. The numbers are obviously worse, much worse, far worse in the black community alone. So to answer the question of what happened to the African American community, the answer is clearly as follows. According to the facts, statistics, and historical evidence, the black community was destroyed by black women in general being paid by the U.S. government to remove the black man from the home, by black women accepting the feminist agenda and becoming unacceptable as wives and mothers, and by black women choosing to have bastard children and fill the black community with them, and then raise these bastard children alone to become dysfunctional black adults who have destroyed majority of the progress that black men made during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and have almost completely run the black community into the ground.